Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome. My name is GBay99. I hope you all are having a wonderful day. Today, we are back with a little bit of an unusual video, something we haven't done in a while. Today, we're going to be doing a guide on how to lane in League of Legends. This is something I haven't really seen many people do, give an overall broad guide on how to lane in League of Legends, regardless of what lane you're in or what champion you're playing. I'm going to try and do that today, talking about the fundamentals of laning. And this video is going to serve two purposes. It's going to hopefully teach you how to lane, or maybe teach you something that you didn't already know about laning in League of Legends. And it's also going to hopefully give you a little bit of insight into how I view League of Legends, and maybe help you understand how I play the game and why I enjoy the game so much, playing it the way that I do. I'm pretty excited to talk about all this stuff, but before we do get into the video, I want to say this is a sponsored video. This video is sponsored by ProGuides.com, where if you would like more tips and tricks on League of Legends and how to get better at the game and all that, there'll be a free 7-day trial you can activate with the link in the description down below. But with all that being said, let's go ahead and jump into the video. When I first started playing League of Legends, after finishing my very first placement matches, I ended up at 1150 elo. This was below bronze at the time in Season 1. I was about as bad as you could be when I first entered ranked, but trying to keep from getting discouraged, I started grinding games. It took a little while, but after about a year, I made it up to Platinum rating, which was the highest tiered rating you could get in the old elo system. It was around this point that I started making YouTube videos and focusing more on YouTube than grinding the game myself, but after a while, I wanted to start climbing again and started grinding out games, making it all the way up to around Platinum 1 or Diamond 5 in the new League system, and it was around here that I became hard stuck. I was not able to climb any further. This meant that I had to start looking at my play objectively and finding places to improve, and what did I focus on improving? Well, if we're being honest, I had to work on everything. When I was hard stuck D50 LP, I was an incredibly bad player, particularly in the mid and late game. I had poor shot calling, poor rotations, poor split pushing, poor vision control, poor decision making with engages, poor focus at times. I really had a lot to work on. Which sort of makes you wonder, if I was so bad at so many elements of the game, how did I make it up to D50 LP in the first place? Well, it was all exclusively from being good at laning phase. Laning was all I really focused on or cared about in those early seasons. It was the most fun part of the game in my opinion, and the only area I tried to perfect. You may disagree, but I honestly think I carried myself all the way up the ladder to D5 through only good lane mechanics, and that's what we're talking about today, how to lane in League of Legends. There's three separate fundamentals that I'll outline here in this guide that goes into what makes a good laner and what will make a successful laning phase. And those three fundamentals are knowledge, last hitting, and execution. Starting off with knowledge, this is the most important part of laning and the thing you should definitely focus on above all else, even just thinking about it while sitting in loading screen or waiting for minions to spawn. In a single sentence, I'd summarize it as follows. Knowledge in laning phase is all about being able to predict things before they even happen. A good example of this would be in my last Yorick Road to Masters episode. A few times in that video you guys saw me say, I know Galio is about to go and last hit that creep, and with that prediction, I was able to get a couple good engages, a little bit of poke, and even a couple of summoner spells. This is what I'm talking about, based off of my past experiences, based off of Galio's movements, and a little bit of common sense. I can think about what he's trying to do and read his movements to predict it and land a free skill shot, getting a very easy engage. Knowledge in laning phase can be about something as specific as this, or it can be about much more broad concepts, something like knowing how an entire matchup will go before you even get into game. For instance, in this game, Aurelia versus Aatrox, this is a pretty interesting matchup. In this game, I know what I should be focusing on before I even enter the lane. Aurelia has a very strong mid game and a slightly better early game than Aatrox if I play around his passive correctly, so I should be aggressive and look for kills early, especially considering even if Aatrox is behind, he's going to scale incredibly well in the late game to a point where he can 1 versus 1 me regardless of what kind of lead that I have, and he'll deny a lot of my split push late game if I don't get that early lead with just how well he scales. These are the sorts of things you should try to learn, being able to see a matchup and understand how it's going to go and play around it beforehand, play to your strengths and minimizing your weaknesses. You can only really improve at this skill through practice and grinding enough games. I can only know who's better at every level in Aurelia versus Aatrox if I play the matchup for myself and I get a feel for it, and this is something that can change quite a bit when champions buy items or if junglers gank or if there's some sort of advantage in levels or experience or something, and and all that kind of jazz. But even so, you can take note of a lot of these things, and if you think about it, you will improve at this skill, and it's a very useful skill to improve at, something that will definitely affect a lot of your games and help you win a lot more laning phases. Next up on our fundamentals list is last hitting. This is the second most important thing you should be focusing on, and let me kick this off by saying that I know everybody already knows that you're supposed to kill creeps and get gold. That's a fundamental for all of League of Legends, and we all do it in every single game we play. We all know this is something we should be doing. But one thing a lot of people don't take into consideration is just how important and impactful last hitting is. Creeps give you more gold per kill the longer the game goes on, so keep that in mind while I'm rattling off some of these stats. But let's assume we're talking about early game creeps. The very first wave of creeps that you kill will give an average, averaging the melee and range creeps, of 18.5 gold per kill. This means you just need a little over 16 CS to get 300 gold from creeps alone. Just 16 CS. This means if you're out last hitting your opponent by 16 CS or more, you already have a kill advantage. That's the equivalent of having a kill and being up 300 gold, being up an entire item. That's a minimum CS lead that you'll need again. Later on in the game, that will shrink. You'll only need a 13 CS lead, or a 11 CS lead, or a 10 CS lead, and every increment of 10 CS will be the equivalent of you having another kill. So you're 2-0, 3-0, 4-0, all while you don't need a single kill under your belt and you don't have to risk your life going for kills. We all already know how important last hitting is, and it's something that I don't need to tell you is a very important part of League of Legends, but it's worth reiterating just how impactful it can be. This should definitely be your main source of gold income in game. Last hitting is by far the most important and effective way to gain an advantage and stomp in lane. And lastly, our final fundamental is what I'll call execution. This is the fundamental of taking your knowledge, combining it with your reflexes, and then using it to engage on your opponent, maybe going for a little bit of harass here, maybe for a trade there, or maybe going for a full 100-0 kill. The important thing to note here is that this should be the last thing that you're focusing on, only a priority after making sure you have the knowledge to go in for a trade and making sure that you're already focused on CSing. That's because it's very difficult to kill someone 1 versus 1 or 2 versus 2 bot lane in League of Legends, considering that that's the worst kind of mistake a player can make. Think about it, if you die 1 versus 1 in League, you have nobody to blame but yourself. It wasn't a jungle gank, it wasn't RNG, you just got outplayed by someone 1 versus 1. All of the information is there, your level, your opponent's items, your items, if someone has certain abilities up, or if someone has summoner spells up, you know all of it. You couldn't put it all together and figure out that you're in danger of dying if you go too far forward. And because this is something that's such a simple and kind of obvious mistake, most of the time people won't do it that often, at least in the higher ratings. However, it's still very important to punish your opponent and take kills when they do make these kinds of mistakes. Regardless of what rating you are in, there will be opportunities for you to solo kill your lane opponent, but you definitely need to put that on the back burner and make sure you're focusing on CSing and making sure you have the knowledge to make an engage and all that kind of stuff beforehand. This should still be a pretty big focus of yours though, and a priority, because if you're able to get a kill, that denies so much. When you get a kill on a lane opponent in League of Legends, you not only get the 300 gold from the kill itself, but you actually get a little more gold effectively because you're denying CS from your opponent while they're dead and walking back to lane, while you get to CS freely. You gain a CS lead, you gain an experience advantage and start out leveling your opponent, which is a pretty massive blow. That can be the difference between getting your ultimate or getting a level on your ultimate or not, and then getting another kill. I mean, there's a lot more than just the gold that you get. So while it shouldn't be the #1 priority of yours, killing your opponent should be a big focus and looking for opportunities to do so. After all, Wings of Death X once said, a mistake is only a mistake if you punish them for it, otherwise it's just a calculated risk. This last bit is also the reason I love laning phase so much in League of Legends. It's so satisfying being able to outplay your opponent 1 versus 1 or 2 versus 2 and having no one to to blame for your awesome play and reward but yourself. You know, there's plenty of games out there that are either MOBAs or MOBA-like games which try and eliminate the laning phase. Some of these games are pretty fun, stuff like Battle, right, where there's no laning and you just jump right into a little team fight in a battle arena. Or there's other MOBAs out there that try and minimize the laning phase and focus more on the team fighting bits while trying to not have as big of a focus as games like League and Dota do on the laning. But I honestly think that laning phase is one of the most exciting and unusual things we can see in a game. You don't have many other games out there where you have this weird duality of having both 1 versus 1 excitement and 5 versus 5 team play in the same kind of game, both equally weighted in how it affects the outcome of a match, and both completely separate skills where your ability in one of them doesn't always affect the ability in the other. Laning will always be one of the most fun parts of the game for me, and I hope this guide has maybe inspired you a little bit to improve your laning as well. If it hasn't, or if you think it wasn't all that helpful, that's fine. Feel free to leave your feedback and maybe some constructive criticism in the comments down below. But anyway, either way, thank you all very much for watching. I'll see you in tomorrow's video, but until then, good luck in solo queue and have a wonderful day.